What's up, everybody? Subaru fan here for another weekly update. So, what's new with the Mustang? Well, I actually put about 1,000 miles on it this past week because if you've been watching the quick drive videos, you know I went to the WAPA rally, which is was held by the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, and so you know, it was a good drive there. And then from that, after that was over, I continued on to Virginia to visit my buddy who lives down there and hung out with him, and then made the 7-hour drive home later that weekend. And so, yeah, like I said, 1,000 miles, and I just love cruising in this thing on the highway. It's so nice to especially have a little bit of the extra power there as well with the V8, you know, and all the rev range. It's nice, and it's also nice just, you know, the fuel economy. Again, I've been consistently getting 27 miles per gallon in this thing on the highway, and it's just so smooth, so comfortable. And you know, now with the stock exhaust, thankfully, it's also nice and fairly quiet and bearable on the highway, where the EcoBoost, once I put that exhaust on, it droned on the highway and wouldn't have been as enjoyable on a 7-hour drive. This, no fatigue. I mean, honestly, I even in the BRZ, that kind of wore me out a little bit after a while, even when I had the stock exhaust on that. But this car, like, I've done this 7-hour trip to visit my buddy many times, and never have I driven that trip and felt less exhausted than I have driving this. I mean, it just felt like, oh, I could do that another 7 hours. Like, it's that good of a grand touring car and that good of a highway cruiser. It's just fantastic in that regard. But as you saw from the title of the video, there have been a couple little issues with the Sync 3 system. So the Sync 3 debuted in the 2016 models here, and my GT is a fairly early 2016 build. So one of the first cars to get the Sync 3, and has, I think, the original operating system on here. I think there's version 1, which is what I think I have. There's version 1.1 and then version 2, which is on the 2017s, that has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and all 2016 owners are still waiting for Ford to retrofit that to make it work here in the 2016s. Ford did promise that Apple CarPlay, Android Auto are both coming to the 2016 Mustangs here. It's just a matter of time and waiting. They said sometime before the end of this year. We don't know when, but we're just waiting impatiently for that. And yeah, but otherwise, the issue with the Sync 3 is that it sometimes just completely craps out on me. And this happened like once, and I thought it was like a fluke. And it happened kind of a second time, and then on this road trip that I was on this past weekend, it just completely died on me, and it's really funky. So there's one time like where it just like, it doesn't like turn on at all, and it just goes black, you know. So like, if, for example, it happened to me, what happened was I stopped to get gas, and you know, I went inside, so I locked the car, and I came back out, and I plugged in my phone, and it didn't recognize my phone. You know, Bluetooth was sometimes working, sometimes it didn't, but it just did not. The USB ports didn't work, and it just would get really glitchy. And then at one point, it actually just like nothing was working anymore. So what I had to do, the like hard reset thing that I've learned with a few times this has happened, is you have to pretend like you get out of the car. So you open the door, close the door like you left, and then open the door, close the door again, get in, and then the Mustang Pony comes back up and it refreshes itself, and then it's fine. So honestly, as long as you can stop and pull over, turn your car off, turn it back on, it's fine. It's not a big deal. I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here, but you know, it just is a little glitch, the Sync 3, and I think, again, it's because it's the early software version. Hopefully the newer software versions don't have that issue and, you know, have some of the bugs worked out of it. One other thing, though, that does kind of happen sometimes with the Sync 3 is there'll be sometimes where, like, I pull into the garage when I get home and I get out of the car, but, like, my wife will hop out first, so she'll open the door and close the door, and so the Sync system thinks, oh, okay, everyone left the car, and then I open my door and then close it, and then it's like, oh wait, maybe someone's back in the car, and it gets confused with that whole little thing, that little sequence of events. And then whenever I go to lock the car, sometimes the screen will stay on. Now I think it has a kill switch so that it turns off, because I don't every time I get out of the car, I don't stare at the screen to make sure it turns off, but every once in a while I like look back and I'm like, oh wait, the screen's not off. So then I just have to open the door and then relock it, and then it immediately turns off. So again, just another weird, fickle little thing. I'm not sure why it does that. It's not the end of the world. I'm pretty sure, like I said, it wouldn't kill the battery and leave the screen on all night or anything like that. I've never had any issues, of course, with the battery or anything like that. But just another little strange little thing. Not the end of the world. Again, I am nitpicking here. Like I said, this car is fantastic, and I absolutely love everything about it. And I mean, the Sync 3 works 99.9% of the time. It's just, you know, a handful of times here so far in the past, you know, I guess 4 odd months that I've owned it, that it's you know, kind of had those issues. But again, nothing to complain about too much. Just want to make you guys aware of it. If any of you guys are considering upgrading to 16s, or if you've had sync issues yourself, just want to do this to let you know you're not alone. Anyway, though, that's it as far as all the updates here on the Mustang, guys. So I'll send it back to me at the news desk for this week's news. Right, for this week's news, the first thing is that there was a little bit of a leak, I guess you could say, of some of the cars that are going to be debuting at the LA Auto Show next month. And one of the biggest ones is the Honda Civic Si, which should be debuting here next month. And we, don't have any kind of leaked pictures or any kind of teasers yet, but we know what it's going to probably look like based off the spy photos that we saw, in the past here. And we know it's going to, be pretty, pretty aggressive looking, but not quite as aggressive as the Type R. But yeah, that's one of the cars that's going to be unveiled according to this document. Also, the Land Rover Discovery, the Smart 4.2 Electric, the Star Wars version of the Nissan Rogue, the Alfa Romeo Stelvio crossover, and the new Jeep Compass are all listed there. They didn't make any mention of the Mustang here, although that was something that we were probably expecting to see, the 2018 Mustang at the LA Auto Show. We're not sure yet because that wasn't mentioned in that article. Other Honda news, though, is that they just officially unveiled the 2017 CR-V, which actually looks surprisingly good for an average high volume crossover. I think it actually looks very distinctive, very I guess handsome, and I think that's actually a really good looking crossover. So well done there by Honda. So they're going through the engines here, and basically you can get the same 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that's in the new Civic. You can get that. It's 190 horsepower and 179 pound-feet of torque. You can also get the naturally aspirated 2.4 liter 4-cylinder, which makes 184 horsepower and 180 pound-feet of torque. And but it should be much more efficient. And like I said, very well done job there on the new CR-V. I think it looks great. Another thing. Now, last week we had leaked images of the new BMW 5 Series, and I was saying how it was kind of boring looking and I wasn't impressed. A lot of you BMW fans were commenting and saying how you're big fans of the news and the channel and whatnot, but you did not agree with my thoughts on the 5 Series. So I'm sorry for offending whoever was upset about my position on the new 5 Series. Since last week, they have unveiled more. Actually, BMW has officially unveiled all their pictures here for the 5 Series, or most of the pictures. I'll get back to why I'm saying most soon here. But anyway, as far as how it looks now with the high-res nice pictures here, it looks good. It's a nice, attractive-looking sedan. I still don't think it's exciting. It just looks like a smaller 7 Series, honestly. And I mean, like some of you, I think, even commented and said, BMWs have never been about radical styling, really, aside from like the i8 and stuff like that. It's the 5 Series. It's the bread and butter. It's not supposed to be anything radical or very exciting looking, I suppose. It's good looking. It's handsome. It's conservative, but good. And so I don't think it looks bad. It's just I guess with the i8 and the i3 and the rumored i5 that's coming and stuff, they have some really exciting stuff there in the i range, and the M models always look very good, and I like the enhancements there. But the standard 5 Series just doesn't get my pulse racing. And it's interesting, though, all these pictures, they debuted like 75 pictures, but they still didn't show any pictures of the dash cluster or the whole center stack, which was my biggest complaint area because it looks so much like the current 5 Series. And so they show really nice pictures of the shifter area and the back seats, but they don't show the front seats, and they don't show the gauge cluster or the center stack, which is kind of curious for them to leave those out. Maybe they'll make some little enhancements there based off of people's reactions to the leaks, but I'm sure that stuff's already planned out and good to go. But for some reason, they omitted those pictures from the official release here. But interesting to see those nonetheless. And for a more exciting 5 Series, I think BMW must be so annoyed because all this stuff keeps leaking out. Someone leaked CAD images of the new M5. So with the M5 front and rear bumper, I gotta say that looks a whole lot more aggressive. And again, it's not radical. It looks exactly like how you would expect an M5 to look. It's kind of similar to the current M3, in its style, and the M2 with the way the front bumper kind of is sculpted and whatnot, and same for the back end, but looks very good nonetheless, and will be a nice improvement. Who knows about the engine, though, because BMW in the past has said that they would never put more than 600 horsepower in the M5, because after that it just gets to be unusable. And so assuming that they continue with that line of thought, then that means that we probably won't have any more power out of the new M5 over the old M5. But one thing to note with the 5 Series, in that official release, they unveiled, I think it's like 174 pounds lighter than the outgoing 5 Series. So lighter weight should improve performance still. Of course, in addition to all the better suspension or whatever they're going on with that for the new M5, it should be definitely a better performer than the current M5, but may not have any more horsepower. Other stuff, though, an exciting looking BMW, the i8. Now, there was an i8 Roadster concept that was unveiled a few years ago, and everyone wanted it to be produced, and BMW said they would produce it. They just weren't sure when, and so now it's looking like it's going to be headed for production in 2018. I'm guessing it's a 2019 model year. And they said it could debut alongside the refreshed or redone i8, which is going to have probably more power, possibly a bigger engine, bigger battery, bigger electric powertrain as well, and make it faster, and then they would have both versions side by side, their coupe and roadster. So interesting to hear that, and we'll just have to wait and see if that turns out to be true. Some other news this past week is, if you remember in last week's report, I was mentioning how Tesla was saying that they're going to have a phase 2 discussion, some big release that they were going to be doing this past week. And what that big release was that all the Teslas are going to be shipping with level 5 autonomous driving hardware from this point forward. So as far as levels of autonomous driving go, all the current Teslas with autopilot are level 3, according to the Society of Automotive Engineers. And so level 5 is like fully autonomous, like you don't have to do anything. It's like you can take a nap and the car drives you kind of deal. So that's what they're saying. That tech is going to be in the Teslas, but it's not going to be made available until at a later date with over-the-air updates and all kinds of other complications, I'm sure. Interestingly enough, though, is that in addition to that, they're rolling back some of the autopilot features in the meantime until they revalidate all this stuff with millions of owner miles and collect a bunch of data, and then they will re-enable basic stuff. So the new stuff, so temporarily, the keyword is temporarily, but temporarily the cars won't have the autonomous braking features, which is standard on a lot of other cars now currently as a normal safety feature. Won't have autonomous braking, won't have adaptive cruise control, any of that stuff. They're taking all that stuff out of autopilot until they revalidate it and make sure that it works well with all this level 5 tech that's built into these cars. And then once they say, okay, well, it still works just as well as level 3, then they'll probably re-enable the level 3 abilities of autopilot, the autonomous driving, and then slowly over time make it more and more autonomous. And so they're just kind of future-proofing themselves here by putting all the newest tech here into current cars. And they said this is going to be standard on all Teslas. So even the Model 3 is going to get all this stuff apparently, which is very impressive as well. Although that may drive up the price of the Model 3 as well. We'll have to wait and see about that. And some big news for Jeep and Ram fans this past week, and that is that there was some kind of dealer meeting, supposedly, where there was some early images shown, renderings, I suppose, of what future products are going to look like, and a ton of stuff leaked out. The first thing that leaked out is the 2019 Ram 1500. We have a pretty clear shot here of what it's going to look like in the front end here with the signature lighting that it's going to have, and you have some shots of the taillights as well, which shows some very F-150 inspired, Honda Ridgeline actually inspired taillights there as well. But that front end looks very distinctive, very cool looking, and yeah, so we don't have any mechanical or specification details about this stuff. We just have these images of what it looks like and nothing more. So that is the Ram 1500, and then the next one is the Jeep Grand Wagoneer for 2019. Which looks very awesome here with this row of these 2 rows of 7 LEDs there in the front, and the Grand Wagoneer is going to be bigger than the Grand Cherokee. They actually had an image here of all the models side by side, and you can see just how much bigger it should be than a Grand Cherokee. So it's going to be a big SUV here. Looks great. We just have images of the front, and then you see the taillights there mirror the headlights as far as the LED arrangement, and again, very, very cool. And that's going to be more like a Range Rover fighter that they said could go even up to like $130,000 eventually. Although, of course, the starting models will be cheaper. But interesting to see that. And then the last thing that leaked out was the new 2018 Jeep Wrangler, which they just have a bunch of images here that they leaked out that show some new LED little bars there on the front fenders. The headlights having some kind of dual tiered kind of thing going on there, which is interesting. And then in the back end, you can see that it has some Jeep Compass inspired taillights, which I think look very good here on the Wrangler. And overall, I think it's going to be a very solid update here for the Wrangler for this all new version. In addition to that, all kinds of stuff that just hasn't been going well for Jeep recently. there was a Jeep owner that was just trying to order a 2014 replacement hood. He lives near, I guess, some of these proving grounds that Jeep uses and whatnot. And so, you know, a lot of these mules and all these prototype vehicles eventually just get scrapped. And they're just destroyed, and they're usually under very strict orders by the scrapyard to completely destroy it so no one can recognize anything because it's early prototype stuff. But there was some kind of mistake where this owner ordered a 2014 Jeep Wrangler hood and ended up getting a 2018 from this new Jeep Wrangler. So it doesn't fit, which is unfortunate for the person who ordered it, but very interesting for those that are, you know, looking for more info on the new Jeep here. You can see how the hood looks very clearly in the pictures. He mounted it to his current Jeep hood just to show the differences in shape that we'll see here for the new Wrangler. And, you know, it looks like a pretty cool hood there, like those vents and stuff. But very interesting to see that leak out as well. It's the first time I've ever heard of a junkyard or, you know, selling off parts from a prototype accidentally. So pretty crazy to see that. Some other stuff that was leaked, I suppose you could say, this week is that Volkswagen filed some new patents, and so some patent images were unveiled here, and so we see some really low-slung coupe that does not have a windshield. These are all probably either concept vehicles or even possibly like movie props or something, but most likely just radical concept vehicles. And so what we see here is one that, you know, is a coupe that looks very cool and probably autonomous, judging based off the fact it doesn't have a windshield. And then you have this other more boxy, crazy, futuristic looking thing, and then another couple other boxy things that don't even look like cars hardly. And so yeah, who knows what any of this stuff is. We know that the Volkswagen ID concept, which just unveiled recently, that isn't even going to be a production vehicle until 2020. So all this stuff you're seeing, if it does in fact point towards production cars, is stuff we're not going to see until well into the 2020s, I think. So we're really a ways off here, but interesting to see they're filing patents this early for this stuff. So could be a whole slew of, you know, concept cars they'll be unveiling at a future motor show next year or something. But very interesting to see that. Another thing is that Subaru officially announced the pricing for the 2017 Subaru Impreza, which starts at $19,215 and comes standard with a 5-speed manual transmission. I'm kind of surprised they're doing a 5-speed though, considering, you know, 6-speed would probably help with highway fuel economy figures for the manual, but obviously that is not their focus. It's obviously the CVT version is the more fuel efficient version to get. So the CVT has an extra $1,000, so it's just over $20,000 if you get the sedan with the CVT. The hatchback version is $500 more for each comparable trim level, and so basically, the way it's broken down, the limited is actually $1,500 more than the previous year's limited model. So there's 4 different trims: the 2.0i, 2.0i Premium, 2.0i Sport, and then 2.0i Limited. And so the Sport you can get with the manual transmission, and in addition to that, now because we know that all the Imprezas will get a 152 horsepower engine, which gets direct injection now, which is how it gets a 5 horsepower bump over the old version. But this Sport trim is pretty interesting to tide people over until the new WRX comes out, because it's going to have sportier suspension tuning, active torque vectoring, and 18-inch wheels. But interesting, they just threw an active torque vectoring in a standard Impreza. That's pretty awesome. But you don't get the LED headlights and things like that unless you step up to the limited trims, which unfortunately don't come with a manual. That's the CVT only on those models. But yeah, and so that's a 1 mile per gallon improvement over the previous model. So it'll do 28 miles per gallon in the city and 38 on the highway. So anyway, cool to see that, and yeah, just can't wait to see the new WRX. Might be a few years off, but still very exciting to see, you know, at least the new Super Imprezas hitting the streets here soon. Some less exciting news is that there's a report here that the Maserati Alfieri is being delayed again. So this was this really sweet-looking coupe that debuted a few years ago in concept form, and everyone was hoping it would, you know, be produced shortly thereafter. But Maserati here has said that the Gran Turismo and the Gran Cabrio are their focuses that they need to work on first, because those are very outdated vehicles, which is true. And so, you know, they need to update those quickly before they, you know, get too outdated and whatnot. So they're going to be working on those first, and then after they get those out, then they're going to work on the Alfieri. So makes sense. It's just unfortunate they can't do all three, or, you know, I guess speed up the process or whatever. But yeah, so hopefully that'll come eventually, but just have a little bit longer to wait on that. Some interesting news from Toyota this past week, not officially, but a rumor here that they're going to be doing some kind of new off-roader concept. And so the reason why is that there was a trademark filed for Toyota FTX4, or 4X, excuse me. And so the FT4X is going to be probably some kind of crossover off-road thing, considering the 4X in the name, although FT usually signified a sports car, because there was the FT, which was the precursor to the FRS and the BRZ. And then you also have, of course, the FT1, which is for the new upcoming Supra. And so not sure, hopefully whatever it is, it'll end up getting built, considering the other FT models have gotten built. But we don't have any details about what it's going to be. We could be seeing something, maybe like as soon as the New York Auto Show here in the spring, or even Geneva could, show us this new Toyota here. But interesting to see that. And with crossovers being all the rage, I'm sure that, it could be something like that. It could also be something like a Jeep Wrangler competitor with how hot those are recently. That would probably be my guess, I think, is some kind of Jeep Wrangler deal. But still very cool to see that. Some more exciting news for those. Way back when, DeLorean said that they're announcing soon about how there's going to be a new DMC-12. And the reason being is there's this new law that was introduced last year that basically says that small companies can produce a limited amount of replica vehicles that resemble vehicles that were produced 25 years ago or more. But the tricky thing with those is you have to get new engines for them, I think. They have to be like CARB compliant and EPA approved and all that kind of stuff. And so basically they're going to be building new DeLoreans with new bodies and everything else, but they're going to have new engines as well. They still haven't sourced an engine, but you can place like an interested pre-order with, they don't know how much they're going to cost either, but it's just, you can fill out a form to say you're interested and you'd like to buy one, if it ends up being reasonable price wise and whatever. And so and they also said that it's going to be available with an automatic or a manual most likely. And so I'm just excited to hear more about that, but very exciting. Hopefully they do some kind of awesome V8 version or something like that, but who knows where they're going to get the engine from. But very cool to see that, and hopefully there's some other car makers that maybe follow suit, because it'd be really cool to get some stuff with the classic styling but have the modern engines in them. That would be really, really cool. Another thing is Audi this past week, there was an interview done with one of their executives who basically said that they're going to be launching their electric SUV line they're going to be starting off with the E-Tron SUV, which we saw a concept of, but they're going to be actually producing, that's going to be the name of their first all-electric SUV. It will just be called E-Tron, which should be pretty cool, and hopefully will, I think that's going to be a very cool name that should hopefully help sell them very well. And there'll be other E variants that will be coming out, later on, and smaller and bigger SUVs and things like that. But interesting to see that. The other Audi news this past week, something official here, is that they unveiled the 2017 Audi Q7 with the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, which was not an option before, and now here it is all of a sudden. It's $5,800 cheaper than the least expensive V6 version, so it puts it at a starting price of just under $50,000 at $49,950 for the 2.0 premium. And so it gets the same kind of horsepower figures as all the other 2.0 Ts, where it has 252 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. So they say that even despite the fact that it's this tiny little 4-cylinder, it actually gets a pretty good acceleration and things like that. They say it's half a second quicker to 60 than the entry-level V6 model from 2015. So still a good improvement. It doesn't tow as much, 4,400 pounds now versus the V6 is 7,700 pounds. But still, I think they said MPG is improved by like 1 mile per gallon over the V6 as well. So just for those that maybe want a little bit of a more thrifty option, want to save some money, don't need a ton of power in their Q7, should still be plenty of get up and go. I think they said with this 4-cylinder it should be around 7.2 seconds 0 to 60. Not amazing, but for an SUV it'll do. And so cool to see that. And then the last thing this week is a report from Bloomberg saying that Apple has killed the Apple Car, that they were struggling for the past 2 years with management and employees leaving and all kinds of stuff to try and get some kind of Apple Car made or developed or even started to develop, and I guess the whole project just fell apart, and so there will not be an Apple Car. Apparently they're still working on Project Titan, which was formerly the Apple Car, which is now just going to be software, like autonomous driving software that they can sell to other car companies. And so maybe they're just going to try and sell that software, but even that has a deadline of 2017. So it's like, if they don't get this stuff done soon, like they're killing everything off and just giving up on the entire auto industry completely. So very interesting to hear that. So yeah, no more Apple Car, but I think we're good with all the tons and tons of car makers that are currently making cars and will continue to make cars for a long time to come. So anyway, that's it for all the news this week, guys. So I'll send it back to me in the car. All right, so the roads are a little bit wet, but I'll leave you guys with a nice little acceleration here like I always do. And wheel spin, wheel spin, wheel spin, more wheel spin. Lots and lots of wheel spin there. Oh man, I love this thing. But yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the weekly update. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Take care.